Hey, I was thinking today about Easter week and where we are in terms of this week compared to nearly 2,000 years ago when Jesus went to the cross, and how that we're coming really close to Passover, which we celebrate tomorrow. And the Jews of that day were celebrating Passover, and we'll soon celebrate the Last Supper. But I was thinking about Passover in relationship to the coronavirus, and it occurred to me that when the first Passover took place, the Egyptians were under the bondage of Pharaoh in Egypt, and were longing and wanting, moaning, groaning to get out of that situation and praying to God for deliverance. And the deliverance that God supplied was to set them free from the gods of that day. I mean, the gods of Egypt were all dealt a death blow in terms of the plagues that came into Egypt that allowed God's people to go free. And so you have a plague against the Nile River, which was the place of life for the Egyptian people, and it turned to blood. And then you have frogs coming out of the river, and one of the gods of the Egyptians was a human with the head of a frog, and it symbolized fertility. And then you have from that lice, and the god of the ground that produced crops. And in each case, then there was a plague that overturned that god's supposed authority. So the frogs came, but then they disappeared. So lice came from the ground and disappeared. The Egyptians, who were known for their medicine, couldn't cure the boils. That the cattle, which were like the gods of comfort and love, which I think symbolize the economic support and superiority of the Egyptian people. So the cattle died. There was 3 days of darkness, and I think all of us know that Ra, the sun god of the Egyptians, was like the highest god of all, but there were 3 days of total darkness. And then Pharaoh was the god who was supposed to be the son of Ra, and his own family then lost because of the plagues that came and the death of the firstborn. But the Israelite people then were safe because they put blood on the doorpost of their house, and the death angel passed over the Israelite people. And I was thinking about that in relationship to the virus, and how that the virus seems to have taken out all the gods of this day, whether it's entertainment or whether it's sports or it's the inability of medicine to deliver a vaccine. And kudos to our medical people. They're the real heroes in this whole thing. But we haven't yet found a way to shut off the virus. We can just manage the virus. Then you think about all the nations of the world and the economies of the world being severely limited during this time of the virus. And you can really go right down the list. Anything and everything that we've ever tried to hold on to in this life to make this life everything it can be falls short, except God. His peace that passes understanding guards our hearts and minds in Jesus. He gives life that lasts not only through this life but into eternity. There is a joy that doesn't match our circumstances, and so God is able to deliver even when all the so-called gods of this age can't. And we have to come under the blood of Jesus, because Jesus died for the sin of this world and paid the price for eternity. And because of that, we can accept his forgiveness. We can accept his freedom and live in life, not because we earn it or deserve it, not because of who we are, but because of his goodness. And so I encourage you to come under the shelter of Jesus in these days. Come under the mark of his blood. Don't be like Pharaoh, who in his pride kept holding out until basically he lost everything and eventually his life. But let's take advantage of what God is offering us today.